Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm Chris Lee, your host. Our guest today is Tim Thompson. He is Vanderbilt's color commentator for men's basketball. This will be Tim's inaugural appearance on this podcast this year. Tim usually joins us during basketball season. This show, sponsored by the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water. The Well has a mission to bring clean water to the world. To date, it has helped over 30 communities across the globe have access to safe water, health, and hope. You can make a difference by visiting a Well Coffee House location today. You may find them in Brentwood, Green Hills, downtown, and Bellevue. You can get more information at wellcoffeehouse.org. The Well Coffee House, where coffee changes lives. And as always, we thank our co-presenting sponsor, Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center, which is located in the Gulch. Today's news is sponsored by Sutherland and Belk, a local injury law firm committed to helping those who have been injured in accidents. If you or someone you know has been hurt in a wreck or other accident, reach out to Sutherland and Belk, see what your rights are. You can find their contact info online at sbinjurylaw.com. Well, more bad news for Vanderbilt basketball. Clevon Brown is going to be out, it sounds like, a few weeks at minimum. The Commodores last night being Wednesday, drop a game to Loyola of Chicago. That was in Arizona. The score, Loyola 78, Vanderbilt 70. Aaron Nesmith has 23 points for the Commodores. The guest line presented always by our good friends Scott and Missy Tannen at Boll & Branch. I've slept on Boll & Branch sheets for years and have loved them. They are fair trade certified, so they're made under safe conditions by men and women treated and paid fairly. Try them for a month. You can return them for free, but you won't want to. Once you get the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Tim Thompson joins us now for the first time this year. Tim, of course, the color commentator for Vanderbilt basketball. Tim, thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well.
Doing well, yeah. We got back kind of late last night, probably around 1:30 from Phoenix, but it was, at least we got back last night. So,
yeah, that's a rough trip, a rough night for the Commodores too. Just really two ugly games in a row where that was not a lot of fun to watch.
You're in a situation, you go, 2,000 miles or whatever to play. And, it's a team that's a pretty solid team. They've got some, the player of the year in their league or preseason player of the year in their league that didn't even had a triple double against us. And then you're playing kind of shorthanded without Clevon. And, he's got the knee injury and it's kind of out indefinitely. I don't think there's a timeline really as far as when he's going to be back. But, again, it's one of those things where, we couldn't guard off the perimeter. And, they had, I think, 44 points in the paint. When everybody thinks that it's in the paint, it's like throwing the ball down to a low post player and, he makes moves in the paint. Really, what this was perimeter drives to the basket. And, scoring off the dribble, off of maybe like a straight line drive to the basket. And that's the thing I think that's worrisome a little bit is, being able to stop that penetration. Again, you're always going to have a certain amount of penetration where you're going to have to come over and help from the weak side and that kind of thing. But, we got to be able to contain the ball at the perimeter so it doesn't break down our defense. And that was one of the things that is worrisome to me is just making sure that, we have to shore that up.
Well, this team, to me, Tim, is just really limited in so many ways. Not a lot of elite defenders on the team. They probably lost their best one with Clevon Brown. We'll probably get into that a little bit later. But I look at them offensively, and what Saben Lee and Aaron Nesmith are doing offensively is remarkable, but they just don't have that traditional guy who can bomb you from the outside that they've had most of the last 40 years, A. And B, they don't have anybody they can dump it down to in the low post and get a bucket in the paint with any sort of consistency. And that just makes it harder on those two guards. And really three if you want to throw Pippen in there.
Yeah. I'm sure that's frustrating for Coach Stackhouse too, because, he wants to play a certain way. And, I think he's got a pretty solid, offensive strategy and defensive strategy, but, you got to have players that can execute on everything. And I think that's probably a little frustrating for him. And again, excuse me, it's year one. And so, there's going to be probably some frustrations for him, as he starts to change the roster and do some things that, he's going to do as the head coach.
Tim, let's just go ahead and get into the mailbag because we've got about 25 minutes left. And I think a lot of the questions that we're going to hit anyway are contained in the mailbag. Anyway, the mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Do you need an insurance agent who wants to know your unique needs and circumstances and will tailor an insurance plan to fit them? Josh is your man. Call him at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He is my agent. Give him a shot, and I think you will be pleased. Door King says, what went wrong offensively against Liberty? Just missing open looks or something else?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Liberty is a really, really nice team. I think they'll probably win the A-Sun probably going away. They're a veteran team. They've got a really good coach. And if you watch that game, they were, when I say they, Liberty was very methodical. Every time they got a ball, a steal or a missed rebound or a missed shot or whatever on a rebound, it was like, okay, stop. We're going to walk the ball up the court and we're going to make you play defense for 20 to 25 seconds. And, that kind of mentality, is one of those things where after that happens time and time and time again, and next thing you know, you look up and, you're down 3, playing against a team like that, your offensive possessions are so valuable. I mean, you've got to make shots because they're going to put you in a situation where you're not going to be able to get in transition and run. And in the first half, it was one of those things where Liberty was missing 3-point shots. And, we were able to take advantage of some of that stuff. But in the second half, they shot the ball better. And, a 3-point lead that Liberty would have, it makes it feel like about an 8-point lead because of the way they play. And, we just didn't make shots down the stretch. And that's the way it was. I mean, they're a solid team and, we're going to have to create better offense, make shots. And then again, we got a defensive rebound. I think Coach Stackhouse was pretty frustrated with the rebounding against Liberty because I think Scotty James had, 11 rebounds against us. So, they've got to shore that kind of thing up a little bit.
You may have hit on some of this just now, but Casey Dorr asks, when teams take Nesmith away and Lee cannot drive to the bucket, what must Vandy do for the offense and who can step up?
Well, that's probably a frustration right now with, for the coaching staff is, you've got those two guys that are basically providing all the offense. Scotty's, had a pretty, couple solid games. But you're going to have some of the younger players step up. You got Dylan, who I think is going to be a really good player. But if you look at his stats, and I don't have them in front of me right now, but if you look at his stats, the large percentage of them are perimeter 3-point shots. I would say 90% of his shots that he shoots are from outside the 3. He's not really hardly shot any shots, mid-range, inside, point blank looks. So, he's got to step up, and I think he's got to take some pressure off both Aaron and Saben. Somebody has to do that. And, at this point right now, it's not really happening. And, as a opposing team, I think you look at that and you say, okay, how am I going to scout Vanderbilt? We're going to switch every screen that Aaron Nesmith runs off of, whether it's, big against little. We're going to put a big guy out on him, make him put it on the floor and do things where he's not going to get wide open looks. Against Saben, you're going to probably have to back off, stop that penetration, and make him shoot the ball from the perimeter. And he's shot the ball pretty decent from the perimeter this year. But I think if you're an opposing coach, that's what you're going to have to do specifically with those two guys. And then their mentality is, okay, if we do those two things, then we'll take our chances on somebody else trying to beat us. And, I think, that's kind of what's happened. And the SEC, they know about Aaron and Saben, so it's not going to be any surprise for them as well.
We've hit a lot of this already, but I'll give you this question as an opportunity to wrap up any loose ends we didn't get to. Dorfan says, what is his team missing in terms of parts that would make it more competitive?
Well, I think probably the obvious thing is, an inside presence, somebody that can score inside. If you watch the game last night, you get Krutzman kid, he's 6'9", 250 or 260, left-handed kid that was non-athletic. Left-handed, but really craft play the game. And, it doesn't have to be, somebody like Anthony Davis. It'd be nice if we had one, but we need to have somebody that can create a presence down low at the block. And also, if you watch that kid play last night, he was an unbelievable passer. They ran their offense really through him, back cuts and that kind of thing. To me, that's what we need right now is some sort of inside presence to where we have a scoring threat where it frees up some of maybe the inside out passing that you can do with the 5-man, back out to, whether it's Aaron or Dylan and those kind of guys. I think that's one of the most important things that we're lacking right now.
Well, I'm not saying Clevon Brown is Bill Russell, but man, compared to what they've got left after him, he almost is.
Yeah. I mean, Edge is, he's a guy that's not played a lot of basketball, and I thought he played decent last night. I think he tweaked a hamstring. I don't know whether he got kicked in the back of the leg or what, but he's one of those guys that he's kind of a project, and he's going to have to play now because Cleveland's not going to be available, and you're going to be in a situation where he's going to get minutes, and he's just going to have to step up. Yeah.
Well, this is where numbers really start to work against you because I believe they've only got 12 scholarship guys on the roster anyway. 2 of those are redshirting, so that gets you down to 10. You take Brown out, that gets you down to 9. You take Yankovic out of the equation. He's banged up for a while. Now you're at 8. They all played last night. Some of them did not play well, and you get one more hurt somewhere, really anywhere, and that really, really changes things.
Yeah. I mean, Joe and I talked about it on the radio last night about just, your roster being depleted, and, an injury or whatever it may be, you're 1 or 2 injuries from being in a situation where your roster is really, really depleted, and it can be really frustrating. And I'm hoping that, Eduque is fine. He acted like he was okay last night after the game. But again, you make a really great point is that, and it's year 1 for Coach, and he's evaluating, he's coaching, he's doing all the things that he has to do. And at the same time, I think he understands that he's, bottom line, you got to get players. You just got to get players. And, that's not news to Coach Stackhouse. I mean, that's obvious. So I think that's on the horizon. What they're trying to do is probably change their roster a little bit.
Tell me if you think this is a fair statement or not. I don't know if it is. It just popped into my head last night. Is Aaron Nesmith to Vanderbilt now what Allen Houston was to Vanderbilt or to Tennessee 30 years ago?
He's close.
Yeah, I mean because the surrounding cast is the part that makes that comparison relevant.
He's just such a valuable piece. I mean, it's obvious. Anybody can see that. His ability to score, I mean, is at an elite level, and he's one of those guys that is going to have to do that in order for Vanderbilt to be successful, and everyone understands that. Opposing teams understand that, everyone. And I think that, I think Coach Stackhouse has done a good job of getting him open shots. He's averaging 22 a game. But again, it's the heavy load is on Aaron's shoulders. And I think he knows that. And, he's accepted that, that burden. And I think he goes out every night knowing that he's going to have to try to get about 25.
Door says, what do you feel Dylan Disu's ceiling is as he matures?
I said earlier, I really like him. I mean, I think he's going to be a really good player. Bottom line, the deal is he's a freshman. He's 200 and maybe 10 pounds, maybe 15 pounds. And he's, physicality wise, he's just not there yet. And really, there's not a lot of freshmen that are there yet when they come into a Power 5 school and, coming from high school. And so, you're in a situation with Dylan where I think he's going to develop into a really good player. He's going to have to develop some inside skills. I think he's probably needs to develop his mid-range jump shooting. He's a fine 3-point shooter. One of the things I think that he probably needs to do is be able to create off a better handle, off the dribble. But again, that just takes time. And, I think his ceiling is pretty high, but at the same time, he's a freshman. Physically, he's a freshman, and he's going to get beat up in the league. Like last night, he had to play the 5 position for about 4 or 5 possessions. And, their big 6'9", 260 kid just, physically just abused him just because, he just didn't have the weight and leverage and the kind of things that it takes to guard at the low post. And so, but that comes with maturity and age and that kind of thing. But I really like him. I think he's going to be a nice player.
I'm looking at comps for him or thinking of comps for him from past Vanderbilt players. I think the one that pops off the most right now is Rod Odom. I think very similar skill sets in that regard. I've seen him, though, being able to take the ball inside a little bit in practice, post guys up. Is there a little bit of Matt Freege in him if it all works out?
I think a little bit. I think, he's going to, from a perimeter standpoint, he's got a really nice shot, just from a form standpoint. And I think you could see a little bit of Matt Freege. Matt was one of those guys that really great shooter, hard worker, same as Dylan, was not a guy that could really create off the dribble. You had to kind of get him his shots. And when you got him his shots, he knocked them down. And I think you're going to probably see Coach Stackhouse, do some of that stuff with Dylan to kind of create shots for him. I mean, I think Coach Stackhouse has done a really good job of trying to create shots for Aaron. I think, that could be something that, will develop for Dylan as well, is, just kind of having to create shots for him off of, pin down screens or elevator screens and doing that kind of thing that, would get him some open looks.
Yeah. And to be clear here, I'm not suggesting that's his ceiling as a player. I mean, it may be. I've seen flashes of Matt's game. I do think he probably turns out more similar to Rod Odom, which that's not a bad thing, but it does make me wonder. I hate to throw that kind of comp out there because he was an SEC Player of the Year as a senior, and Matt also was, I think, a lot more advanced at this stage than Dylan is.
Yeah, I mean, Matt physically was more, was bigger probably and stronger. I don't know how much. It's been so long. I can't really remember it. That sounds bad, but and the other thing you worry about, and Matt dealt with this too, is as freshmen, and Jordan Wright and Scotty and Dylan, everyone hits the freshman wall. Everyone. I don't care who it is. It could be Anthony Davis. He hit a freshman wall when he was at Kentucky. As good he was. The physicality of the game, the amount of practices, the physicality in practice, the amount of games compared to high school, everyone hits a wall, and you don't know when that is. And that's your concern as a coach too, is, number one, when they hit it, number two, how long it takes them to get out of it. And, the quicker they get out of it, the better they become, because now all of a sudden physically and mentally, they're like, okay, now I've got to, change my aspect of how I prepare for games and, how I lift weights and all the other kind of stuff that, that goes along with it. So, yeah.
Door says, Do you see flaws in mechanics for specific players that would result in continued poor free throw shooting, which is currently 66% for the team?
It's really funny. That's kind of been a bugaboo for, last 2 or 3 years is free throw shooting. And, you look at guys like Matthew Moyer, his shot, his rotation, form, everything it's good. Really Saben has become, form, rotation, all that kind of stuff. Personally, I think a lot of it is like the 6 inches between your ears. And, from a mental standpoint, it's like, oh gosh, we were 20 at one time last night. So you have 9 free throws, and a couple of those were front ends of a 1-1. So now you've missed opportunities to actually get 2 points instead of 1 point. And so, it is frustrating, but I don't think it's anything as far as, form and rotation and that kind of thing. It's more of a mental thing, I think, at this point, with the entire team for the most part.
Mr. Vandy says, other than Aaron Nesmith and Saben Lee, who would you consider the most improved player on the team? Boy, there's not many left after that. Not a lot of returning players. I guess it's yeah.
You probably look at somebody like Dylan Disu, who's a freshman, who and this is his first year, so it's not like, okay, well, he's improved. I just think he's a really nice player. I think Scotty's a nice player. I think they're learning on the fly because as well as I do, when they get ready to come in the league on January 8th, when we go to Auburn, you're gonna find out a completely different level of what we've been playing right now. So Scotty and Dylan and Jordan and those freshman kids are going to realize, okay, now this is a different level of who we're playing against, and quickness and physicality and intensity and all that kind of stuff. So, I think that's going to, all 3 of those freshmen are going to have to improve dramatically here in the next, couple of weeks when we hit the SEC.
Dorfan says he set the over-under for SEC wins at 4. Would you take the over or the under?
I guess I'm probably, I look at it and I think, 4, that would probably be right at it. The league probably overall might be a little bit down this year. But if you look at it, all of them have really, pretty good players. I mean, Georgia's improved. Arkansas has improved. You got Kentucky's Kentucky. I think, with Tennessee, you're going to, they're a little younger, but they're solid. So again, you just got to come to play every night. And, it's just it's a hard league to play in when, you don't have an inside presence down low, and, you don't have really a full roster of guys that can play in the league. So, 4 probably would be in that neighborhood.
Yeah, I think I would take the push if that were offered to me. The problem that now is we don't know how long Clevon Brown is going to be out. That to me affects things. And again, not because he's some superstar, but because the bind that leaves you in, which we saw last night. And look, I think what I have heard, you have probably heard a similar thing, is it's not season ending, but the way that's phrased tends to make me think he's out a while, maybe a month or 2. There's also the adjustment period when he gets back, getting back in shape and confidence and all those things that come with it. If to me Clevon Brown is out more than he is present, then if I'm forced to take one, I hate to say it, but I probably take the under at that point.
Yeah, it's just, you just don't ever know with, some of these injuries is, how quickly, kids recover. And then to your point is, everyone knows how quickly you can get out of shape in, when it comes to, big time Power 5 basketball. And, you hope that he can kind of, from a cardio standpoint, that he can, he can stay in shape, whether it's on a bike or something, where, he can try to keep his, his wind and his cardio ready. But, I don't think that there's really a timeline. I think the word is indefinite at this point, and so that's kind of where they are.
Vandy Fan 96 says Jerry Stackhouse has seemed like a coach who is good at making halftime adjustments, in my opinion. Against Liberty, it didn't seem like many were made, but also Vanderbilt could not buy a bucket. What have been your thoughts on Stackhouse as an X's and O's coach?
Yeah, I've been impressed with him. I think, you sit there and you look at, some of the adjustments that he does coming out of timeouts. And that's what I always look at is, okay, what do you do coming out of a full timeout? Okay. And, some of the things that he's done, to get baskets, from an offensive standpoint, to get baskets out of a timeout, I've been best play in Liberty. I don't know if you recall it, backdoor dunk by Saben. I think that put us going into the locker room up maybe at 5 at half. That was a drawn up play. I think he really knows and understands what he's doing when it comes to making adjustments when, as far as after timeouts. And I think he's done a good job of coming, if you like at Richmond, I don't know off the top of my head, it's been a while ago, we were down and, he just came out and he set 3 or 4 plays for Aaron. And next thing you know, Aaron jumps up and knocks, 9 straight points down, and Saben hits a couple of threes. And so he came out of the locker room, with just the point of emphasis of we're going to get Aaron shots. And that's exactly what happened.
This last one from Ann Arbor Door, has Tim seen any practices? And if so, does Jerry Stackhouse actually play at times? And if he does, how do you think it helps the players?
Yeah, it's funny because, I've not been to a ton of practices, but, when we were out in Phoenix, and it may be on, the social media stuff, but Coach Stackhouse played. And I think it was eye-opening for the players to realize that, off the top of my head, I think he might be 40, mid-40s, early 40s, something like that. It was eye-opening when he jumped in there and played with them, how good he was. And so, I think he probably has done that a couple of times. But again, he's 40 some years old, and, you hate to have him in a situation where, please don't let him get hurt, and tear the Achilles tendon or whatever. He's on crutches over on the sideline. But yeah, I think, he has participated in some practices, and it's pretty obvious how good he is.
Yeah, he's got an interesting personality. He's very intense and very serious about his job, but I think he also likes to have some fun too.
Oh yeah, everything I've heard about him, from what I understand, he loves to, barbecue and cook and do all that kind of stuff. And he's got to be intense right now. That's his job. He's a guy that, is coaching a Power 5 team in the SEC, and he's got to have that, kind of intense mentality. And that's his mentality. He always played like that when he was in the NBA. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I know it's frustrating for Vanderbilt fans right now, but I think, you just kind of have to be patient with, from a roster situation. And, because I can tell you right now, the coaches are working hard, and, they're trying to get better, and the players are trying to get better. And, it's just one of those things where it is what it is, we'll kind of see as we go forward. But again, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Aaron Nesmith and Saben Lee both. And when I say that, Chris, is the other players have to step up too. I mean, all of them know and understand that, but they have to step up too. I mean, the coaches can put them in a position, to get open shots and, set screens and do all that stuff. But, bottom line of the deal is you got to produce. And I think that's one of the things that some other players have to step up in order for Vanderbilt to be successful.
Final thing before I get you out of here, I have been really surprised at how down the SEC is compared to my expectation. Florida was supposed to be an elite team. Florida right now looks more like an 8-9 seed. sort of team at this point. I think they'll get better, but you had LSU just getting obliterated for most of the night, I think in Baton Rouge against ETSU. Tennessee lost at Cincinnati. Tennessee lost at home to Memphis. I mean, you've seen some bad losses. Missouri lost to Charleston Southern. Kentucky lost to Evansville. It seems like the conditions are there that there are some wins on the table if Brown can get healthy and they can improve with some things. I just have been really almost shocked that the league was not it's been as bad at times as it's been.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of certain teams having, young players come in. I think Florida's got some young players. Plus, they've got the Blackshear kid that came from Virginia Tech, who, and I think, say what you want to, he's a really, really good player, but there's an adjustment period. He's not played in fire. What did we play in 11 games this year? So I think there's an adjustment period for everything. You look at Kentucky, there's a ton of young players, and Cal's MO is, they're going to probably take some losses early, but they're going to be better and better and better as they Tennessee's kind of the same way. They got some young players on that team. So it's just a process. And I think we're talking about kind of how down we are right now, but in a month and a half, 2 months, we easily could be talking that some teams step up and be, elite teams in this league as they mature and get better.
He is Tim Thompson, the color commentator for Vanderbilt basketball. I am Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. We'll have a couple more episodes dropping on probably Friday and Saturday. Tim, we appreciate you joining us today. Have a Merry Christmas, and we look forward to catching up with you after the break.
Thanks, Chris. You guys have a great holiday.
You bet.